Hey, Buffalo, Western New York, and points beyond. Welcome to Conversation with Jim Anderson on this beautiful day. Actually, welcome to Conversation with Jim Anderson and his extremely brilliant and talented uh, co-host, and that is
Austin Martin. Good morning, Buffalo. I'm excited to be back, and thank you.
Hey, no, thank you. Listen, y'all know I was out of town last week, and y'all were in good hands. And I rushed back because I'm like, hey, I don't want to lose my kid, And I really, it it was impressive. And if you go to my website page, you could see the recording, you can hear in the subject. It's a everybody subject, and it was really great. So, Austin, how did you like the moment?
It was a great chance to get my feet wet in the world of being on the radio. I'm new to it, but it's exciting, and it was a great interview to break into something that was interesting. Like we talked about in the interview, nicotine and smoking is something that's affected many, many people. Almost everybody knows someone that's been affected by smoking or cancer. It's universal almost. So because of that, it was something that hit close to home, but also with great guests. It was just a great experience to get used to it, to get comfortable, and I look forward to doing more in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it too. And I know I've had some folks already tell me, oh man, that was a great show. And of course, bragging a little bit. I say, yeah, I know. But truly it was. And I know you're gonna say, well, where did he come from? Yeah, I'm telling you, we got plenty of young people here in Buffalo who are just as radiant, got skills, and all they need, like one song say, I get by with a little help from my friends, is for us to be friendly to one another, particularly to our younger folks, because they do need a shoulder to help them as they rise. And believe me, they're rising. I always say the bearers of the new knowledge, the new skills, and man, it's just wonderful. I am super pleased. I almost can't stop just thanking you because it is in these moment of time where people often say, "Oh, these young folks don't care." Huh. Yeah, they not only do they care, but they can carry the moment as well for it. Our guest today is slow roll. Slow roll may slowly roll in here. He eventually, but the two people are coming in, and when they get here, we will deal with them. We will talk with them about what they have coming up. But since I got you, this will be like an opportunity for me to pull a little bit more out of you, because um, Austin is also already in the groove of he's his own businessman. He's already doing things that look, you would be surprised. I was, but I was more surprisingly impressed and attracted to like, whoa, this is a rocket ship that's taking off. I want to be on with that. I want to be in that zone. And so let's talk about some of the things you do and how people might be able to get in touch with you.
For sure. So outside of the radio experience, I'm a speaker and communication consultant, helping people have more effective communication. And I know for a lot of listeners, effective communication may sound like, what is that? But to me, effective communication is open, meaning that we can talk. If I live in a household with parents, I feel comfortable going to my mom and dad asking for advice. I feel comfortable going to my peers and mentors in my community, asking them for things that I don't know or just for support. That's open. It also has to be authentic. Part of good communication is that I can tell you truly how Austin feels and not be scared of what Jim might say back. Right? Or I can tell my mom that I'm really struggling and tell her I'm struggling, not because I'm scared of her saying she's disappointed, but because I want her to say that we can help you. That's authentic. And the last part is logical. I think that we all recognize we are emotional creatures, but sometimes emotions don't make the most sense. They just happen and they fall upon us. So logical, meaning that I can explain how I feel calmly, right? Whether I'm mad, upset, or super happy. If I can express how I feel in a way that can be understood, not just by the heart, but by the mind. To me, those three aspects of open, authentic, and logical are what it takes to be an effective communicator. I want to help create that for not only me, but for everybody speaking.
Oh man. Hey y'all. I always get excited when I'm in studio because my guests, they come in lit, and not only that, the room, the vibration, the spirit, the aura of what they bring in the room really means a lot, and that's what you're doing now. I'm already got excited. Listen, the things you're doing, that is powerful. And your presence is a key example of the type of young people that are growing up in our community. And if we embrace you, man, your rise will be not only good for you, but good for us all. Because your generation is a generation that I believe that are making the new world that is needed. I mean, most of the things I see young people do, even when they're in the streets, they're not in the streets because they're crazy. They're out there because they're trying to create a world and bring attention to all of us to help in doing that. And the world that I think your generation is trying to bring to it is one that is inclusive of everybody. Because the world we have now is excluding, is oppressive, and suppressive on many people, and needs to change. And certainly, your generation is stirring it up, and I think you need to.
For sure. And part of that, like you're talking about, the younger generation is why it's so pivotal to me. One of my big initiatives that I'm working on right now is creating an assembly experience for kids in schools. And that comes from the idea that a lot of the issues that kids, or a lot of the reactions that kids choose, violent outbursts and things of that nature, stem from the fact that we aren't taught how to have a conversation. And it's something we take for granted. As you get older, and most adults can attest to this, you're expected to be able to communicate effectively. But if you can recall the time when you were taught, then I'll wait and hear that. Most people just hit their head and learn their lesson as they move through life for how to have a communication, how to effectively get their point across. But I don't think it has to be such. And like you said, recognizing that the new generation is trying to create the world we want to live in, I think it's so important that we equip our young people with the communicational skills to be effective and spread those ideas in a way that doesn't require violence or fear. Because
Okay.
speaking well isn't something that, one person has to, fall upon or luck. I think everybody has a right to have the words to express how they feel.
You're absolutely right. I should say, for listeners' sake, that our guests, whenever they arrive, we'll bring them on air. And I should say, if you try to reach me on the telephone or anything, I don't have access to my phone right now, and when I'm on air. So if there's something you're trying to get through, um, you might try calling the station and leave a message, or just text it, but I won't be able to pick up the phone while we're in the midst of what we're doing now. So just thought I'd drop that out there, y'all. Um, let's talk about something else. So now that we've done this interview about the smoking piece, and they're looking beyond menthol, I was thinking in the aftermath of that program that, see, stuff like that needs to have a greater presence. In the program that they're talking about engaging. I hope it'll be more than, like, do a blast here and then a blast later on. But I think it's important for on that issue to have a much stronger presence because it connects to our communities economically. I often complain about, you walk around and you see these stores that have all kind of advertisements sometime in their window, but nothing healthy. You see advertising for beer or cigarette with scanty clad women. In the impact in our community, when you have a lot of stores like that, while some adults may ignore it, it leaves an impression on people. Our young, it like, I think it suggests us how they should dress, and people think, oh, you got to have a dress like that, or you got to have a glass or something in your hand in order to be cool for the guys and stuff. So, there's learning on so many levels. So I often think about it, and I always, not that you will know the answer, but I think I want to ask you, what do you think is some of the attraction for young people when it comes to smoking? Um, Often, how did they get into it?
Going back into communication, I'm always going to go back because this is the whole reason that I decided to take the path that I'm taking. I think it goes back to young people aren't taught how to have a conversation. And so when we fall and stumble into these hard parts of our life and we don't have the coping mechanisms, because most people aren't taught coping mechanisms, and we don't have the way to ask for help, what do we fall on? We have to fall on something. And what unfortunately happens nowadays are substances are everywhere. Substances are more readily available than ever before in history. And it's not even just about physical. I can make calls, make texts, and get things delivered to my house. And so smoking just happens to be one of those vices that people fall on. It's something to kind of distract you from the life that you're running from. And so as young people, like I said, because we can't say, you know, hey, I'm struggling or I'm drowning outside of water. We can't say that, right? And then if you want to go even deeper, another step, in modern times, it's getting harder to be more successful.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people on the earth. It's very hard to stand out. And so when you're trying to be successful and you're struggling in that venture and you can't find a way to get out of that, at least if you're going to be in the pool, you might as well enjoy your time in the pool. And so if you're drowning, a lot of people just fall, especially young people, fall on drugs, not just smoking, but whatever it may be, just as an escape from the life, because it follows you around now. It's not like I can leave the house and go for a walk when the phone's in my pocket. If I'm having issues with people online, it could follow me around. And now we know even more nowadays, because everybody's connected, one decision, right? One outburst can be the end of a career.
Yes.
Can be the end of many years of what you've been working on. And so when things are so high intensity and have such a ability to break and fall through on you, a lot of people just turn to, especially younger, we turn to smoking or isolation is another very common one, where you'll find that kids, as they fall into stress, suddenly don't want to be around anymore. They don't have as much to say. Days go from, it was good, mom, I did this, to, you know, how's your day? It was okay. And then they run to their room because, like I said, we don't have the tools in our tool belt to diagnose when things go wrong. We prepare for when times go right, but you got to be strong enough to stand when times go wrong, because like we talked about, we're aware as people that life isn't all sunshines and rainbows. There's some dark days, necessary as such, because those dark days make the bright days so much more brighter.
Yeah.
But that being said, when those dark days come, you have to have an umbrella to stay in that rain. If you don't, then you fall on other things, and smoking just happens to be one of those readily available.
You know, your radiance, just anyone talking or meeting you will know that, hey, follow the stream, go back up the stream from whence you come. And it's clear that you have support on the home front. And I know not only because of your mother and father who embrace you, I mean, that's just powerful. And it's a call to the community that where there isn't such assistance, we have to be available to every young person. And I love what you said about if you don't know, if you don't have the access to the information that will counter the negative, you fall deeper in the trap. That's what I think about when these I won't say certain movies, I would say sometimes showing these negative features in movie do more to lead people into it. And we don't have enough programs and stuff going on to counter that. So like if cigarettes are being pushed, we need more actions that are pushing towards the more healthier posture and pushing against that. We don't have that. And this is one of the reasons I think those organizations that engage in trying to confront and push back on those kind of negative need to bring more money and have a longer term, a more greater presence, be more constant. I don't think doing like you do something 1 month and then 3 months later you do another thing. I don't think that's enough to build the strength on any subject within a person to really be able to stand on their own. We're in a challenging world, but it's so beautiful. Your generation with what you're learning, and I just hope y'all never lose your voice to express it. And I just hope my generation give y'all more opportunity and more support. You know, you heard me say I'm everybody's talking about we're standing on the shoulders of those who went ahead of us. I'm with that, yeah. But I think some of us need to be living shoulders, lifting your generation higher and walking right along with you. Because, you know, look, there's a lot of tricks within society. And, you know, when I think about, sure, you want to be able to have a good job, a home, you want to be able to have your own home. And right now, it's hard to see what is the road that will lead to that. That's why the kinds of call the action and action being taken, it's so important and
Right.
awesome, man.
Right. And even what you talked about, not to go too far back, but because we're kind of just talking, I think it's about making the educational choice. When you talk about the information, like we have so much advertising on the negative. And you're on radio, you're in media, so you understand negative things sell. It's hard to keep selling these positive messages and people gravitate towards the negative. When you talk about making an educated and informed choice, let me ask you, if you went on Craigslist and you were looking for a new car, and then you went to the car listing and it said one thing, good car. That's not enough.
Yeah.
You got to tell me the negative for me really to know when I'm getting this car, what I'm getting into. And the issue with cigarettes and things of that nature in communities and even just education in general is we're fed one narrative, but rarely are we ever given the inverse. That's left up to us, right? That's the consumer's discretion. The little 2-inch sticker on the package that says it could cause cancer is supposed to be enough information for you. When you don't have a fair or truly open choice, you're not really making a choice. You're not really making a true choice.
Right.
You're kind of being led into something. And that's not what creates a equitable and truly fair environment or community or society, when you're not being given all the information to make the best choices. And even what you were talking about later, as with the elders and the older people in our community, for the youth, part of that is just that education, the education of different opportunities. Times are changing, like you said. Times are changing, and as shoulders and that people who have seen tragedies and blessings, both ends of the spectrum, preparing kids for the journey of life. Right, one of the greatest things I ever learned. I was watching a YouTube video. I should have been doing something else. I had to work, but I was wasting time watching a YouTube video. And the video started, and he said, "I want to tell every young person one thing: life is difficult.
Yes,
life is difficult. It's hard. Don't beat yourself up when times aren't going your way, because that is what life is. It's just hills and valleys. And when you back up, if you back up a little bit, you can see the upward growth. But while you're in it, sometimes it's not as great. And what I want to leave and just tell elders and older people in our community, when you find difficulty communicating to the youth, is be slow sometimes, because it's our first time here. It's my first time being 19. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. It's my first time here. It's my first time in a radio station. And so when you see younger people stumbling, hitting our heads over and over again, and you're looking and you're saying, I'm giving up on the youth, just remember, if you were a baby again, everything you saw was new from the moment you woke up, you wouldn't make it out the front door in that day. Right. We're not used to this. And especially now we have the internet. Nobody's used to this. And so, like I talked about, the analogy I used earlier, if we're gonna all be in the pool trying to swim, let's work together. Let's not make it difficult. Let's lift each other up, because like you said, it's not just about being shoulders, but being living shoulders. Yes. Because the more you help, the more you push us up, the more we can pull us up. We can pull people up. Yes, and we can all rise together if we just recognize, like you said, the interconnectedness of it. And I think that the catalyst for that is being able to do what we're doing right now and talk. And that's why I feel like my mission is so integral to what I want to do and the legacy I want to leave, not just for me, but like I said, for everybody.
Yeah, listen, when people talk about folks who have that leadership quality and can lead, you definitely exhibit that. And I'll throw a little seed in there. We're in election season. So as you go along, don't dismiss that as a path that you might want to take as well. I mean, look, what you know and what you can do and where you deploy it at, you have a wide open field. No door is unavailable to you. And if it's locked, we could go check it out, find out why it's locked. Look, there are a lot of walls that exist that block people out, young and old. And it's time for us, as it's been said, take down them walls. And that's what's happening in this moment of change. This moment of change is being driven mostly by your generation. I mean, the expressions that you have, because as you look down, what is the window of life, and you look out there, ain't nothing on the show. And you're like, no. And the people who have been here, that didn't put nothing on the shelf have to be held accountable. And that's where I think about the generations that I am in. I think also, as you were talking, I was thinking about there's a scripture in the Bible that talked about there was a generation that knew God and did everything that they were supposed to do and praise and everything. And then after them, there was a generation that came that didn't know and did all these things that people say, oh, what are they doing? And the question I often ask people, so who is the villain? Not that any was a villain, but I ask it in a way, who is the villain? Most people will say, well, those that didn't do. And they overlook and forget that they can't do what they don't know. The real problem is the generation that knew, that didn't teach, that didn't share, is really at fault. And I think in a real reality, that's where we are today. Some of the things that your generation is facing is because of the lack of teaching and embracing of the older generation. With that said, we're going to go to a break and we'll be back.
Right.
Cool.
People are on your live, so make sure you give them the phone number to call in.
Oh,
For
okay.
sure. You can call in for sure.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
You can call in at 716-837-1112. That's how he said it, so I'm going to say it the same way. But 716-837-1112. You can call in and ask a question. We're just kind of talking right now about general interconnectedness of the generations because we don't have the guests. We'd love to have you in the conversation. You guys make this possible. So for sure, call in and we'll love to answer any questions or just hear your interesting point. And the question I want to ask you, because we're kind of talking about it, is, right, we recognize that, you know, sharing communication, that mentorship relationship, like you talked about, especially in the Bible, who's at fault for what happened, right? Recognizing that that's where we are right now. I want to talk to the younger perspective about how do you ask for help, but I want to ask you as someone who's on the other side, as an elder who's giving the knowledge. What are some advice, or how do you, as a wiser person, instill knowledge in a way that doesn't feel like you're speaking down? So that's the issue that a lot of people fall into when as a young person, I don't want to ask somebody for advice because they're going to sound like, why don't you know that? Or they'll say like, oh, you don't know that. And then I feel bad. And if you feel bad about something, you're going to do everything in your power to avoid being in that situation. You're not going to keep going somewhere and getting laughed at and things of that nature. So as someone who has the information, what are some strategies or what advice could you give older people who want to pour into the youth but don't want to seem like they're talking down? Or that's what I was going to ask you before this commercial break.
Well, I would say that one of the main things is to knowing yourself that you know something. No matter what somebody outside trying to dismiss it, know that you know something. And then here's some tricks that you need to be aware of, because adults will a lot of times say to your generation, oh, you young. It doesn't ingratiate you. It's sort of like pushing you down, like saying you don't know, making you feel small. Or they'll say things like, you know, when it comes to different, you know, I've been here 20 years, as if that means something. I tell my young people when we're in a group, because then I want them to exhale. I say, when somebody pull that on you, when somebody talking about how long they've been around, as if it's great, what I want you to think about saying is, you've been around 20 years and that's all you've done? And see, the reason I do that, when it's in the room and I see that, they like, you know, what the sound that comes out of them is refreshing, because it's sort of like they look at you. Understand? I do understand that older folks tend to dismiss, push you aside, be short with helping answers. Hey, we're back, and you're listening to Conversation with Jim Anderson, and we were in the midst of an interesting topic. Oh, by the way, you can call us at 837-1112. I mean 716, of course, in front. 837-1112, and get in the conversation. But as I was saying, we were talking about how often young people are pushed back or dismissed and treated like they don't know anything. Like if they ask a question and sometimes they get a response, they say, you don't know that? I think my generation has to learn to not dismiss you, but to embrace you wherever you're at. Even if they think you don't know it, and even if you already know it, we still need to respond with the right answer. and help. And when it comes to helping, we know that sometimes young people won't ask for help. That's why we have to pay attention to all the other aspects that communicate. Like when you see people isolating, you see people kind of shrinking in themselves, and you could almost see the fear and hesitation of wanting to ask something. We should encourage that. We should. As an adult, I would say to young people, don't be afraid. One of the key things that just got through telling a group of 60 young people up in Albany is that, people, when you hurt, people say, ouch. And I say, and when you need help, you got to be able to say, help. Don't drown. Don't buy into thinking, oh, it makes you weak if you holler for help. It's brilliant. If you know that whether you're lifting something heavy, it don't have to be physically heavy, but something that is like, whoa, this is weighing on you. Yeah, you need help. The question is, where can you get it? And you have to be careful who you go to. And so this is why it's important not to dismiss young or old. You'll find the attractions to people where you feel that is safe, that won't dismiss you in a negative way, that you can go to. And I say do that. And part of it too is do it anyway. Even if you don't know, if you need help, ask someone. Here's what you will find out. If it's someone who dismisses you, okay, you learn easily this is not somebody that is engaging, and really that person got a problem if they're not willing to engage you. And so it's a learning process, and but like I said, when you know something and you know that you know it, nobody can take it away from you. And there's another thing I want to say. I think every young person, we went through it, but now that I'm on the other side, something that I think every young person has to do is how to move away from the apron strings. What do you mean by that, Jim? Look, when you're being raised by parents and they're teaching you, and I mean, look, all the years they spend getting you to where you at, to where you can launch on your own. Launch. Don't be afraid. Like you even at the dinner table, discussions that can happen in a household, not to be rude or nasty, but because you do know some things, I would be quiet. We got a call coming in, and that'd be great. Caller, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, Mr. Anderson, how are you, sir?
All right. You good? Hey, you're on.
Hey, praise Yeshua, Austin, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh man, better than I deserve. My name is Chris Stevens, and I was listening to the Facebook broadcast there, and I want to say to Austin, I've been keeping up with some things that you've been doing, and you are a very exceptional young man. Your ability to communicate, to articulate yourself, to process information, and then to make it understandable for people is a gift. It is a gift. I was listening to you all speak about the topic of young people, not dismissing young people, right? And for the older generations to be able to speak to young people in a way that's edifying and encouraging, not condescending, not dismissive.
Yes.
One of the in Mr. Anderson, you had taken a segue to a biblical part of discussion before your break, and one of the things that was coming to my mind as I was listening is that God, when He was on the earth as the man Jesus, was first a young person, right? And this is the most wise, omnipotent God, if we believe the scriptures that are the Bible, right? And He lived here and grew up, had a childhood, matured, was cared for, was taught. Not that He needed to be taught anything, but this was what He subjected Himself to, to connect to, the human race, those who He created in His image. And when I think about that, and our Creator, became a man and subjected himself to, infancy and childhood, growth and pain, and lived amongst us in that way. It makes me to think about the value of the youth. The youth right now. You imagine if you were on the earth in those times, you saw a young child, you probably would have thought that's God, walking over there. That's God sitting at the kids' table eating over there. That's God out there running around, the Creator out there running around with his friends playing. But, that's what the Bible claims. The Bible claims that, God dwells in Jesus, in the fullness of Jesus in bodily form. And to me, that speaks to the necessity to pay attention to our young people.
Oh, yeah.
To look after our young people. We don't know what gifts, God has set aside in young lives. You don't know who is
That's right.
next, for sitting with the next great preacher. So I think that you might, I think that you might be one of Yahweh's next great preachers. As I listen to you speak and as I listen to you talk. I just wanted to say that in reference to the conversation. And a point before I get off of there, for you, Austin, I want to say, have you ever considered personally studying the life of Jesus?
So I grew up in the church. My family and my parents really pushed the church very heavily. And I would want to become more involved in the church as I grow older. The reason I don't go through the church for my message of communication, I think that not from the fault of any believers, but as the church, we have stigmas, and involuntarily and unconsciously, some people, especially younger, separate themselves or create boundaries because they feel like they're not what the church wants. They don't feel like they fit in the church model. And so with those people, or with those youth, I don't want to leave them out. Communication, whether you believe or not, is something I think is important. And as believers, I recognize that you don't win other believers by forcing the word on them. You don't win other believers by telling them what they should feel, but instead is by leading them to the light that, some people have been brought to, leading them to the knowledge that we also believe in. And so why I don't use that as the main anchor point for my communications, because I don't want anybody to feel like they can't listen, like they don't fit my message, because they do. And if you listen well enough, you'll hear me talk about blessings and God in my message. So it's not forgot about or put into the passenger side, but that's why there's a distinction in communication versus just in clergy for me.
Amen. Amen. Very, very well said. I really do enjoy that. And would just like to continue to encourage you as you're growing in your skills to communicate and to connect in your generation. You are right on target. In the scripture in the book of 1 John, it says, "This is eternal life, to know God, and the one whom He sent, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ." Salvation is about a knowledge. It's about a knowing. And as you are a communicator, we understand the more we know, the better we communicate. When we see issues in Christ Church, as far as connecting, to humanity, because you find, trying to find one person on the earth that Jesus didn't die for, you're not going to find one, because He died for everyone.
You got that right.
Salvation is not for Yeshua, Mr. Anderson just said.
You're right. Hey,
salvation is not. Go ahead, sir.
No, I'll let you finish up. So in case the next other call get in and additional comment.
No problem. Last point for encouragement for you, salvation is not exclusive; it's inclusive for everybody. But we do need men and women who are skilled at knowing how to communicate the truth of Scripture. And yes, I just want to encourage you that as you're going forward, you're doing such a great work as you continue to study. Take a look at the life of Jesus, the claims around Him that the Creator of heaven and earth, Yahweh, became a man and lived amongst us. Study that for yourself. Find out if it's true, and if it is true, after you've investigated it to its fullest extent, communicate it out to your generation, and just watch what Yahweh does with your life. So, but God bless you, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you for that call, Chris. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. You know, this brings up something that comes to mind. I had an experience the other day that I think is connected to this. I was in Niagara Square with a group that was highlighting the needs of the immigrants that are coming into the area and how important it is to help. And a young lady came up to me and she handed me a little leaflet. You know, everybody's handing out a leaflet on something to do with the scriptures and stuff, and began to question me. And I was short with her. You know, I told her, I said, that's TMI, too much information. Because here's what my attitude is. A lot of people in their faith walk, they get inspired, they get all emotionalized, and they want to go out and find others. Nothing wrong with it, but I think sometimes people fail to see the light that's already in the others that they're trying to attract. I have to tell people, look, Christ didn't twist nobody arm, didn't hit nobody in the mouth, didn't stalk them in order to draw them to him. And I think that those who are with him, who know the word, you know, may not always be in what people feel is some house of faith, may not necessarily be a member there. But if you look in scripture, not everybody was in one. Now, trying to understand which is right or wrong is nobody's business but the individuals and God himself through Christ. And yet the globe, those who have accepted the Lord, people want to know, have you accepted the Lord? It's none of their, not to be rude, it's really none of their business. If you say yeah, then what are they going to do? If you say no, what are they going to do? In other words, sometimes people have to see the light. If they want to encourage you, if they want to give you something, they can encourage you and keep moving. If they want to pray for you, they don't have to get your permission. Go ahead and keep moving. I think sometimes people do things like they want to be in the middle of Broadway, big production. See what I'm doing? I don't think that's the way that we bring people in. I think when people see the radiance and folks they get attracted to, then they want to know, where'd you learn that? Where'd that come from? And in their own, they'll figure out, oh, wow, because everything else you say will align with where your beliefs and your strengths are.
Right.
I saw the faith. That's what I saw. The radiance in you is what I saw first. I mean, I didn't have to say, oh, that's when it got to. We all got children, but your radiance is a gift. And you gain it through many ways. Yeah, you paid attention in school. You got a family that supports you, and there are elements in the community that help you as you go down the road you pick. Look, you can't do that without something much greater driving you. And you may not be able to articulate it all yet, but I see that in you. And I'll stop there by saying, there are a lot of folks like say, somebody prayed for me. Look, I don't know how to explain it. I'm just saying this is what I see in you. And I just think I wanted to say, sometimes trying to draw people to the church or to Christ is do it by example. Sometimes you don't have to say nothing. They see and they'll want to follow, they'll hear and they'll want to follow. But you don't have to do take them, press them down, hold them, corner them and stuff. But I'll shut up there. I'm about to fly off with that. I think it's important to grow into a faith walk, and you're in that age range where some things don't fit. I would say everything in church ain't church. Sometimes I find there's a little bit too much entertainment and not enough entertainment. And so, it's all good.
For sure. One of the greatest compliments I ever got, and I never may have told him that it was a compliment, was I had a friend, and I'm going to be honest, this isn't my first time doing interviews. I used to do interviews for myself. They were called Diverse Discussions. And I've been chilling with this friend for maybe a couple months, and he wasn't in faith. But if you talk to me long enough, you'll hear small things. I don't use luck, I say blessings. I don't say talents, I say gifts. And one of the biggest things that I think that you'll never know unless I say it, but for me, I believe truly the peace of God is that I know whether I got it right now, I get it tomorrow, I get it in a year, I'm gonna be okay. So one of the things that you'll notice as well as no matter how the situation is, most of the time, or no matter how my money is, you won't really tell if I have $40 in my bank account or 4 million, because Austin's gonna be the same.
Yeah.
And that's through God. But during this interview, he had asked, and it was a small moment. He said, "You're Christian, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." But I had never told him that, never
Right.
outwardly told him.
Right.
That. And so after that moment, and I'm listening and I'm thinking, it was one of the greatest compliments because he was able to see the light of God through me without me ever opening my mouth.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
to me, I hope that was a greater shine to where, or the type of person that I am and type of person I've been raised to be, both in my family and my community and through my faith. That was a bigger testament to that than any conversion somebody could have told me, because that small moment showed that my faith walk transcedes what I can say or my own knowledge myself.
Right.
So that was that. I definitely understand what you're saying. And to that point, I think as a church, the best thing we can do as a faith is to make the church so radiant, so beautiful, like you say, that people can't help but want to come inside versus just trying to lead people inside. Because one of the things that you'll notice, and I've noticed in my little year of business, is it's one thing to try to change someone, but somebody has to have some desire in them to change before you can ever make an impact.
Right.
Because the more you try to change someone who doesn't want to change, the harder they'll run away.
Indeed. And it brings to mind, I often tell people, look, everybody that say, Lord, Lord, ain't with him. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with friends. Everybody that know your name, Austin, you know that they ain't necessarily with you. You don't have to put them down. But, think about some people who that ain't really with you, and you be somewhere because everybody else is like, Austin, yeah. Austin, yeah, Yeah, this is what I'm saying. So a lot of people, and I'd say that because we're in a time where, look, there's some people that run around and say, oh, do you know the Lord? They don't even know him. They're trying to figure out how they're going to get what you can get. I'm saying, don't be fearful. I know you're not fearful, but I'm saying to listeners, look, it's all good to be in a church, but you still got to know something. Don't just be sitting there. You should be a learned one in there. In fact, I would dare say, I won't dare say, I'm going to say it straightforward. You should know what the leader of the flock know. To be helpful, not only for yourself, but to them. What if the leader of the flock is on the wrong page? If you don't know, you're going to let them walk further into the wrong direction. Or what if the scripture is misread? If you don't have a sense of it, you're going to have a wrong understanding. I don't mean you correct someone in the moment, but you got to know. And then later on, if you're really in somewhere, you can say, Pastor or Deke or whoever, you can bring it to them. And a lot of times people catch themselves that they were on the wrong, miss something, but then always correct themselves. That's why you have to know. You got to know for yourself. That means read the book. Don't just carry it. Or read it, with the technology, read it that way, but read it. Know what it said so that you don't get duped, It's not just for deacons to show themselves studied and approved, but all of us need to be knowing what is it that we align ourselves in faith with. Well, we just had church, y'all. I wish I had a plate. I would have y'all put something in the plate, but I'm just kidding. And y'all know what I'm talking about because, that's a subject we don't often talk about. We don't often talk about the challenges that are in our walks of faith and growing strong spiritually. And something else that came up in that makes me think about why, again, your generation is so important. I remember growing up, they used to read somewhere in the Bible where he said, suffer the children to come unto me. In other words, he's invested in them. The same thing we should do. We should be welcoming young people to come unto us. How can I help you? What do you need? And, we should be prepared to help them. We have come through the same valleys that you're going through now. A little different, but we know a little something we can help. I say to my generation and those who can't say they're young, let's start helping. You know, maybe a T-shirt you ought to be wearing instead of some misguided comment on a T-shirt. Wear one and say, "Hey, I'm ready to help." Anyway, let me shut up. Yeah,
No,
hey, I'm enjoying it. I know I fly in a lot of different directions. I'm like, let the spirit roll. There's so much that can be done, but the main thing is that we need to be putting out the healthy stuff. We need to be challenging some of the rhetoric that's out there that people like to let slide. No, let's push back against that. Let's put some healthy stuff out there. I enjoy when I see a young person engaged in conversation with someone, and I mean, it's like power. It's just powerful. I'm shutting up. Yeah.
But communication goes both ways, like you talked about. You talked a lot about the one side of the elders, the people who have the wisdom. I want to talk for a second to the people who are on the other side, the younger people, because it goes both ways. And here's something I want to really hammer down and hammer to the point of for young people listening. Asking, you know, we rely on Google. We're an internet generation. Something I don't know, something I go straight to my phone. But there's something special about hearing it from the source. Google only has so much information, and there's some things that weren't wrote in the history books. History is written by the winners. It's not by everybody. Whoever wins writes history. And so because of that, some things Google is just not gonna have. Oh, my bad.
No, not your bad. Go ahead.
Got a caller going. Oh, I can finish that point after the caller.
Go ahead. You can fit. Just when you say, hey, we got a caller. You on the air. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to your guests also.
Yeah.
I'm interested in knowing about the generational division, and I want to suggest also that it's not any different than when we were young people.
Yeah.
There's always been a divide in relationship to philosophy, standards, approach, and strategy. Always. I remember sitting in FDLC building in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was sitting down talking to Jose Wade. And I said to him, it seems like the older people just don't want us to lead. And Jose turns around and says to me, but are you ready? Because it's significant that we understand the importance of older people as it relates to the advancement of younger people. Because in many instances, we've made a multitude of mistakes. And how do we, and this is the question, how do we link up the generations in order to avoid making the past mistakes that we have engaged in on a continuous basis? And finally, you use the biblical example, Jim. And one of the things is that Nehemiah, the prophet, was going to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. But he understood, because God gave him instructions, that we link up older people with middle-aged people with young people.
Yes.
And have these generations working collectively together. And from the older people representing the past, the middle-aged people representing the present, and the younger people representing the future.
Yeah.
And merging all of these three things together, these entities together, in order to advance our people. So how do we go about doing it? And Jim, I remember 2 years ago when you invited me down with a bunch of young people who were engaged in the Black Lives Movement and addressing those particular issues. And I said to you, one of the things I noticed about them is, number one, they don't listen. And they went about the process of doing things in such a fashion that it was somewhat even confusing to me in relationship to understanding their goals, approaches, and understanding. So how do we develop a commonality for the same causes without causing and manifesting and continuously addressing this issue of the division amongst our people? And I'll hang up and let you answer that question. Thank you.
All right.
And that's that question is what I think communication solves. I think that's so true. A lot of the things that we wonder have been answered in the past. And this is why I want to speak to the young people specifically. A point you mentioned is that we don't listen. I think that there's some validity in that. Confidence and arrogance and ignorance are all part of the same family. But that being said, I think the first point I want to tell to young people is, like I was saying, we fall on Google. And that's why we don't listen. We're like, man, I could just go on Google after this and look it up.
Get an answer.
Or you done told me 2 wrong things in the past month. I looked them up on Google. You want strike 2. I don't know. Like, so some for so young people, that can be a very hard bridge to get over. But I want to say that, like I said, history is only written by a select few. Everybody's not a historian. Okay. And so a lot of history goes unremembered, unknown, and not on Google for you to find it. So in the community, I want to first open young people's minds to understand that there are some things that people in the community know that Google can't tell you.
That's right.
And you won't know them until they tell you. And so the second point I want to go into is that when you're talking to someone, the benefit of small talk. I think as young people as well, we have a hard mindset to understand that you can go through a whole conversation for one nugget. Or you can go through a whole conversation and hear nothing that really is applicable after. But I want to tell you that whether you hear nothing that's applicable after, at least you learn some things that aren't applicable. And in that value, I want to say there's value in every conversation. So give people a chance. Ask those questions purely for the fact of you're either going to learn what you need to know or what you don't need to know. But there's always value. And there's value in just having the conversation. I have another point I want to do as well, but I'll do that after because we have a caller waiting to talk. Caller, you are on the air.
Yes, beautiful. Just really loving this show. I just want to add one comment. Bob Marley has a song called One Drop. And he has a line in the song, he says, and we're making the one stop, and that's the generation gap. So if you're in church and there's no young people, or if you're in a place and there's no one older or younger, that's showing, as you all are saying, that there's room for improvement. We're using Google because we don't have the continuity of trusted communication with each other. All communication should be both ways. We're listening, we're speaking, we're participating. That's how we learn, and that's going to really go to us, especially as Black people in particular, making sure that we have our cultural reality intact. Everything don't have to really be redone, but we do have to orientate ourselves to stay focused on what worked for us. So I'm loving this communication. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Our struggle is intergenerational.
Right.
And both the young and the old have to remember that. Even when you hear some older folks say, oh, these young people don't want to do anything, it's not the young people. That's actually a confession of an older person that don't want to do nothing. Because you're not from another planet. We should not be hesitant and afraid of you. We should be embracing you. And we should have a light in the window for where help is.
Right.
We don't have much of that. And I would also say that when it comes to educating on any issue, education doesn't start at the red brick house door, it starts at the community door. It's every block club was to do a census of how many young people on their block and considered their ages. Man, we can make some change. Let me tell you, listeners, we gotta get out of here because time flies. And we didn't need a guest today. We had this, we're going to be picking up elements of this conversation because Austin is going to be right here. Like I said, he's co-hosting and he's going to be pushing us and he's going to be bringing in things from the generation that he's a part of and helping to close the gap that some of the callers already mentioned. So I just want to thank you for listening. I know it's a holiday. I'm cool in this day. I'm a combat veteran myself of Vietnam, 3rd Marine Division, Charlie 1-4. Anyway, with that said, I want to thank you, Austin, and I'll give you the last words.
Of course, it's a pleasure. I want to say thank you for your service on the air. Thank you to your service for all the veterans out there that are listening. And I just want to say, I hope that I can continue to talk about this message of communication and how it can get us where we all know we need to be. And the last thing I want to say, shameless plug, if you want to hear more on communication, you can check out more of my stuff at my website at www.austinvaughnmartin.com, where you can see a bunch of things focused on communication and how we can, as we call it, bridge that gap. So thank you for being on the air today. It was a pleasure, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here with all the listeners. And I'm excited to be here in the weeks following. So thank you and have a good rest of your day.
Right on. Thank you, callers. We out of here. Have a great day, a safe day. Be kind. And if you can help somebody along the way, do it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Tell the people buy on the Facebook one.
Thank you for being on the live. I appreciate it. It means a lot. I appreciate the callers that called in and were able to contribute to the conversation. It helps. And the positive words mean a lot. Trying to make things happen. So when you're in the tunnel, you can't see the light sometimes. Just a kind word can be a little beacon to keep you going. So I appreciate it. I hope you guys continue to join us as the weeks follow. So thank you. Have a good one.
Hey.